Now, the Philippines told us that the U.S. told the U.S. it is pulling out of a key military pact between the two allies on February 11th. The Visiting Forces Agreement, or FTA, was signed in 1998 and has been called the bedrock of the Philippine security, as well as an important pact of the U.S. overall Indo-Pacific strategy. Some say this is a big blow to the U.S., but a big win for China. But what does this decision mean for the Philippines, and what does it say about the future cooperation between the U.S. and one of its key allies in the Asia-Pacific? Joining me to discuss this issue is from Singapore is Lim Tai Wei. Mr. Lim Tai Wei, Associate Professor from National University of Singapore, and from Washington, D.C., Dr. Ivan Eland, Senior Fellow at the Independent Institute, and also Mr. Hailin, Vice Dean from Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. I want to start by asking you, Dr. Eland, how does the U.S. look at the termination of this deal? Because we got mixed signals from the President and his Defense Secretary. The Defense Secretary said basically this is a blow to U.S. security strategies in the region, whereas President Trump said, look, it's fine because the U.S. doesn't need to pay any money to the Philippines anymore.
Yes, well, I tend to agree with President Trump. I don't see this as necessarily a drawback. I think the United States really supports a lot of defense in all over the world of countries that can do more for their own defense. And the Philippines are taking a risk, being a small country that way, and the U.S. is far away. It has other neighbors which are closer that could be more of a problem for the Philippines than the United States. So I think the Philippines is probably going to regret doing this, but it's good for the United States because I think we need to stop defending countries that can defend themselves, or at least do more for their defense.
Well, I just want to get a perspective from the Philippines. We have from Manila, Dr. Jed Rabena, Research Fellow at the Manila-based think tank Asia-Pacific Pathways to Progress Foundation, on the phone. So, sir, some analysts are saying that Duterte's decision was triggered by... good evening to you. Some say this decision was triggered by America's refusal to give visa to one of the key players in President Duterte's war against drugs, Senator Ronald De La Rosa. Do you look at it that way?
Yeah, well, actually, that is part of, that's one of the reasons why the President wanted to terminate the VFA. But it's actually one of a series of actions on the part of the U.S. Why he did so. Another reason being is that some senators wanted to have the opposition senator, Leila de Lima, released. So President Duterte saw these actions as infringing on Philippine sovereignty.
But why now? We understand that President Duterte's term will end in 2022, and according to the current constitution of the Philippines, he's not eligible to run again. So why this decision and why now?
Well, it's a statement of displeasure on his part to the Americans. So by terminating this agreement, he basically wants to send a message that
okay. Sorry, I think we were losing you. You said sending a message of what? Okay, I think we lost Dr. Rabena for the moment. But Mr. Ye, I want to go to you. Does China really benefit from Duterte's decision to terminate this pact? Is this yet another move by Manila to pivot towards Beijing?
I think it's a wrong perspective that there's a game between China and the United States in Manila. That means that Manila is a step away from the United States, means that Manila is a pivot to China. It's not a zero-sum game between China and the United States when their relationship related to Philippines. Philippines made a decision because Philippines will be and want to be a more independent country. Of course, China will benefit from this situation because a more independent Philippines means a more friendly neighboring countries for China and a more stable geopolitics situation in the South China Sea areas. So, of course, in general, China will benefit from this, but it's not because of Philippines is a step away from the United States.
Okay. Dr. Eland from Washington, there are a number of deals between the U.S. and the Philippines. We have this mutual defense treaty signed shortly after World War II. We have another enhanced version of the security arrangement in 2014. And this visiting forces agreement signed in 1998 that was terminated was just one of them, right? So walking away from this deal doesn't necessarily mean abandoning this alliance.
No, and also we saw the Philippines react in a nationalist fashion when it kicked the U.S. out of Subic Bay and Clark bases before, and of course then they later came up with this agreement. So I think, you know, it's sort of a roller coaster with the Philippines, and of course there's a lot of nationalism in the Philippines, justifiably so. The U.S. was a colonial power there for many decades, and therefore you do have that nationalism. As far as whether it benefits China or not, I think it does, but I think it also benefits the United States. I agree with your colleague there who said it's not a zero-sum game. Usually in security it is, but I think the U.S. does have a containment policy in China as far as security goes, and a trade relationship with it as far as economics goes. But in the security relationship, it usually is a zero-sum game, but in this case, I don't think it is. It does benefit China. It will have more influence in the Philippines. But also, I think it benefits the United States, because I think we need a renewal. I don't think we should be all over the world containing China or any other country. And I think we need to pull back a little bit in Asia and renew our own economy, etc. So I think it can be a win-win for both China and the U.S.
Well, Mr. Eland, you understand as well as I do that those on the right in the U.S. will say that, look, this withdrawal from this treaty or a lesser role of the U.S. in Asia-Pacific will send the wrong signal to other treaty allies, from Japan, Australia to South Korea. What would you say to them?
Well, I would also say that, and our European allies are the same way, they're all very wealthy countries, and it's not like they can't band together in some sort of a security arrangement. It doesn't have to be an alliance, but they should be, the countries of Europe and the countries of East Asia should be the first line of defense, and we should be the balancer of last resort, in my view. A strategy that we used right up through World War II. We abandoned that during the Cold War for this global policeman role, and I think we're overextended now. We have many more commitments and costs that we can no longer afford. We have 23 trillion in national debt, so I think we need an economic renewal at home. And we still have bases in Guam and Hawaii. We still, for our own security, we still have a very extended perimeter, even if we dumped all those alliances with Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Australia, etc. We still have bases out there, and we will.
Certainly, one of the bases, one of the security relationships with Singapore, Mr. Lim Tai Wei, I want to go to you. What kind of security relations does Singapore, or do you want to see, especially given the termination of the alliance or the termination of this specific pact between the U.S. and the Philippines?
The U.S. is a very close friend of Singapore. It's a long-time friend, and the relationship between the U.S. and Singapore officially are strategic partners. The U.S. trains with Singaporean troops. U.S. assets are also found in Singapore. So the relationship is very close, and this will continue to be so for a very long time to come. But at the same time, Singapore as well as ASEAN also welcomes confidence-building measures with China. As you know, since last year, ASEAN has had tabletop exercises with China. ASEAN countries also had actual exercises in building confidence between ASEAN troops and Chinese troops. Separately, Malaysia, Thailand have also trained with Chinese troops. So has Singapore. So all these will help to build confidence between ASEAN countries, including Singapore, with China, even as Singapore engages U.S. presence in the region. Well, so this is the kind of arrangement that is currently that can be found at the moment.
So, Mr. Lim, what do you think this pivot from Manila towards Beijing, perceived or real, will do to the South China Sea situation?
Well, the South China Sea ASEAN countries have been working very hard with China for the code of conduct. It has made a lot of successful progress at the moment. The code of conduct, as you know, have all been unified into a single document. The talk is going on, progress is made. So eventually, it is hoped that the code of conduct will be able to regulate tensions and also other issues within the region. So this is the kind of progress that that ASEAN countries is making with China. At the same time, ASEAN countries is also working with other stakeholders in the region, India, Japan, US, to keep the trade going, multilateral trade going, even as ASEAN quietly signs the ASEAN Economic Community in December 2015 in the hope of increasing intra-regional trade within ASEAN as well.
So, Mr. Yeah, I want to go to you. In your vision, from your vantage point, how do you wish China, the Philippines, the relations between China and the Philippines will be headed?
I think the China and the Philippines, we would like to see the more stable and the more progress a more stable relationship between China and the Philippines, and the more progress made by the two governments and two people. We already see a lot of the cooperation projects in the recent years, and now the relation is much better than the past than several years before in the last president who holding Manila. And I think if such kind of a tendency can keep going, China would like to see more actual on the ground projects happened in Philippines, and also we would like to see China and the Philippines can work together to conduct to make the contribution for the stability of the South China Sea. Of course, China would like to see that, and China doesn't see Philippines as a threat. And in China's perspective, there are two kinds of the South China Sea issue. One is related to Philippines, the sovereignty issue. It could be solved by the bilateral negotiation. Another one is between China and the United States, and we don't want to see Philippines take the side. That's simple.
I want to thank all of our guests tonight, Mr. Lim Tai Wei, Dr. Ivan Eland, and Mr. Hailin. Thanks so much for your perspectives, gentlemen. And that's all for this edition of The Point. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download CGTN app to watch our show, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN. This is The Point. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.